In this video, we're going to talk a little bit about how to configure motors and also a little bit about the online help that's available. So if you click on this button up here, you can click on add a motor, and you just want to add a single motor for what we're doing right now. You notice that you also have 2-motor drivetrain, 4-motor drivetrain, motor group. Don't select any of those, just select the motor. And so this, I've already configured those, but let's look at one of the motors. So here's where you can name the motor. So the motor that was on the left, I called left motor. And here is where you can specify what is the positive direction. So if you look at the left side of the robot and you look, looking at the motor, if you want the robot to move forward, right? So the wheel will actually spin counterclockwise, but to make the wheel spin counterclockwise, the motor needs to spin clockwise. So that's why this is showing forward as being clockwise and reverse as being counterclockwise. If you want on the right side, you would do it the opposite, right? So forward would be counterclockwise. And then we're using the 18-to-1 gear cartridge, so you need to put that in there as well, and have that left motor plugged into number 1 receptor there for the. So anyways, that's how you set up the configuration here for the 3 motors for the base bot that we have right now. And I'll just click on that motor again to close that. And you can see that automatically sets stuff up in here. It shows you left motor 1 and so on. And so that's what you need to do. Now, the other thing I started to talk about in class was set up. You already have these functions for drive straight and turn right. If you want to set the speed, so in other words, the default speed could be something. I think it's pretty slow, as I remember. So another interesting thing, I want to set the motor speeds here before I call these functions, so that if I use a function or a method for a motor where it doesn't explicitly request or none of the parameters actually have the velocity, so it uses the default velocity. So to set the default velocity, I'll start to type in left motor, and you can see that it's trying to complete. So now I just press in period, and now here's all the different methods that I can use for the motor. So I'm going to go down here to set velocity. You can see there's 2 of them. One is in percent, so that's going to, in a sense, it's going to adjust the PWM duty cycle, which in other words effectively adjusts the voltage. We want to adjust the velocity, so I'll select the second one, and now you can see it's looking for these 2 parameters. One is the velocity, the other is the velocity units. So say I want it to go 150, the motor to go 150 RPM, so I'll put in 150 there, and then for the units, I'll just type in RPM, right, or I can just click on that, and then I'll delete the rest of the stuff here. Okay, and then I have to put a semicolon at the end. All right, so that will set the velocity for the left motor, and to set the velocity of the right motor, I'm just going to do a copy and paste, and then I'll just change this to right motor. Okay, so now I could go ahead and build that and download it into the robot, and so now the motors, whenever the motors, we use the spin for here, then the motors will try to spin at 150 RPM. So that to turn on that completion option, you go up here to the name of the program and just select Enable Expert Auto Completion. Okay, don't select Enable Expert Robot Configuration. You're not ready to do that, but this is really helpful, the auto completion. Because it's hard to remember all the different methods that are available. And as I said before, this button right here is so that when you download it or upload it to the brain, you can store up to 8 programs. So this one would be stored as program 2. So another thing I'd like to mention is in terms of the when you write your polygon function, so it'll make sense for you to use the drive straight function and the turn right function. But in terms of the order, you want to put, if the polygon function uses these other two, then you want to put it after the other two, before main, but after the drive straight and turn right, since it will be using those functions. So I think for Arduino, it doesn't matter where you put the functions, it still figures out. But generally in C, you want to put any functions that you're going to use, define them before you use them, and obviously before main. Okay, and then another thing I want to mention is you can use select tools and then select this advanced help, okay, which is pretty nice. So for instance, if we look at the classes and go down to motor, right? So here you can see all the different methods. So these are like the functions that you can use with the motor class. And so like for instance, we talked about setting the velocity, right? So here is the setting the velocity in percent units, right? And this one is in velocity units. So if I open that up, you can see, you put in the velocity and the velocity units, and set velocity, as it says here, it sets the velocity of the motor, and it will not run the motor, it just sets like a default speed. And any calls that do not contain a specific motor velocity will use this default velocity. So anyways, you have a whole bunch of different methods here that are explained, what they do, and then what their parameters are. Okay, so I think that does it for this velocity. Please let me know if you have any questions.